Hello and welcome to another lesson in our Python programming. And in this lesson, we are going to deal with functions. So let's dive right into it. So far, we have learned how to use some of the built-in functions in Python. Most especially, we dealt with the print function, and we know what the print function does. What the print function does is that it displays something or whatever we put in the parentheses in the console here. So for example, something like this, prints. Programming. Run this should appear or display in the console here. So basically that is what the print function does. It displays something in the console here. So what we are going to do in this lesson is we are going to learn how to write our own functions. But the question here is, why do we have to write even our own functions? Why do we have to do that? The issue is when you build a real world program, build a software, that program is going to consist of thousands of lines of code, and you don't have to write all this code. You don't have to write all those codes in one file, as we have been doing and as we are going to continue doing as beginners. By beginners, we can do that, but it's not advisable. But when you begin learning from the beginning, you can do that. But actually, when you begin writing huge programs, huge softwares, which consists of thousands of lines of code, you don't have to do that. You should break your codes into smaller, more maintainable, and potentially more reusable chunks, very, very small bits. So we refer to these chunks as functions. Now let's see how we can write a very simple function. So we begin with our def keyword, which means define. And we give our function a name. Let's say the function is going to be something like greeting, for greeting. So we open close our parenthesis, introduce our colon here. Then whatever is going to be written here is going to be inside this function. That is why the indentation is appearing here like this. So let's say we want to print something. So we say print, let's say hi there. Sorry. That is the first one. Let's say we need another one. We say, let's say something like print again. We say welcome aboard. Something like that. So when we run it, nothing will actually display. But before something can be displayed, we have to call the function by its name. So come here and say great. And with this, it means we have just called the function, and when we run it, we should see something here. So it says hi there, welcome aboard. Basically, this is a very simple function we have just written by ourselves. We can use this for a lot of things. Now let's see what's the difference between the greet function and the print function here. The difference is very clear. With the print function, it takes input, whatever you put inside the bracket here, and you run it, it displays in the console. But with the greet function we have just created, it doesn't take any input. Now let's see how we can pass in we can define some parameters like first name and then last name in our function, and let's see how it's going to be. We talk of parameters and arguments, and we're going to talk and deal with more about that. We're going to talk more about that here too as well. So let's define some parameters here like first name. So say first name, then comma, and then last name. So now after that, we are going to want the function to display something like greetings or something stuff. So we want this to be something like hi Kofi Mensah, welcome aboard, right? So we concatenate this to first name, and we then concatenate it to last name as well. So with this, we are done defining our parameters. Now here we have to pass in some arguments here, so that when we call this, it will display something like hi, the first name, and then the last name of the user. We're going to input here, and then the greetings will also follow. So now let's pass in the arguments here. So let's say Kofi, right? So it's going to be a string, Kofi. So we say comma here, then another string, and say Mensah, something like that. So when we run it, we should see something like hi Kofi Mensah, welcome aboard. So that is that. We can even make it more. We can use it for a lot of different names. You can just copy this, Control C, Control V, and you can pass in different names here. It will still be the same. Let's say King Solomon, you run it, you should have the same thing here. Hi, King Solomon, welcome aboard. So basically that is that. And like I said, we talk of what the difference between a parameter and then an argument, and we say the parameter is the input that we define for our function, whereas argument is the actual value for the given parameter. So this is a parameter and this is what argument for the given parameter. So basically that is that. Now let's see how we can the next thing we're going to do is, let's say, now also note that the number of parameters you will define for your function requires the same number of arguments. Now what we are talking about here is this. We have defined two parameters here, which is the first name and then the last name. What we need to know is that if one of the argument is missing, the program will throw an error. Let's try that and see. So let's assume we have passed the first name. Let's go with the last name. Let's do it with the last name and run our program and see. So you can see that it says what? Type error. Great. Missing one required positional argument. It means until the second one is introduced, this error will still be there. So let's add it and see. It's going to be something like when we run it, the error should be gone and then display the right thing for us. So that's that. Now in our function we define two parameters, that is the first name and then the last name. So when passing the argument for the given parameters, two arguments is required, that is the first name and then the last name. We need to make sure that we add the various argument for that. Now let's try removing one argument once again and see what's going to happen. Like let's try doing away with coffee and see what's going to happen. So let's do it with that as well. Let's run it. So the same error here, positional argument is missed. Then we have to pass in the two arguments to make sure that the argument is complete. Based on the number of parameters we define, the same number of argument is what required. So basically that is that. Now in programming we have two types of function that we need to take care of. Now function that perform a task, that is the first one, and a function that calculate and return a value. Now the greet and the print function are example of what? The type 1. They what? They are the function that perform a task. What do they do? When you run them, they display something in the console here. It means they have performed their task. Their task is to what? To display something in the console. Maybe take some argument and then display something in the console. So basically that is that. That is what the two of them do. Now in contrast, a round function, there's a function in Python we call a round function, which is used to what? Round a number. For example, like floating numbers, like you say round into bracket maybe 0 point something something, it rounds the number for you. Now it's also an example of what the second type, and with that one it returns a particular value. After it rounds the number, it returns the round number for you. So basically that is what the round function actually does. Now let's try writing a very simple function like a function we can use to what? Increment a number by what? A given value, something like that. We want to write a function to increment a number by a given value. So let's do, it's like we wrote something like that in pseudocode. Now let's try writing it in Python programming to see. So we say def. These are our defined keywords. So we say increment, give it a name. When giving a name to your function, make sure the name is familiar to what the function is, that what the function does. It's very nice that way. So what we are going to do is we are going to define some two parameters here. That is what? The number, and then the number of times is going to be increased. So it's something like say number and then comma, and then the by. This number should be increased by this. So these are the two parameters we have what? Defined for our function, or we are defined for our function. Now I want it to return something like this. So you say return the number plus the number of times is going to what? Be increased. So that will be by the number plus what? By. So basically that is that. So now after that we want to print the results. Write something like maybe we want to set results is equal to, then we say increment, then we call the function now, then we pass the argument, that is the number. So let's say we want 10 to be increased by, let's say 5 of 5. So now let's print the results and see what's going to happen. run this program, you should see 10 being increased by 5. So 10 increased by 5 is what? 15. So basically that is that. Let's do it with this. So basically that is how the increment function does. As you can see, the moment you run it's just going to what? Increase it by the number of times you want the number to be increased. Let's try another thing again. Let's say, okay, this same thing to be increased by 2. Let's say something like that, by 2. So when you run it, you see something different. That is 12. You want 20 to be increased by 2, so say 22, and basically that is that. So this is a very simple function for what? Incrementing a number. So that is that. Now the problem with this particular function is this: in terms of the argument we pass, one might not know what the argument is all about. Example, something like this 20 and 2, one might not know what they are doing there. Are you getting it? So in that case, we use something we call keyword arguments. The keyword argument is in a way that we can predefine this particular argument with what? This keyword to let the user know that this number is for this and then this by is for this, something like this. So we can say number equal to, so that is that, and then by equal to, so also something like this. Say by equal to also 2. So now whenever the user comes here and run this or see this source code, the user will be able to know that this number is for the 20 here, the argument 20 here is for this particular number, because we predefine it with what? The number. That is the keyword from the parameter. And also by is for the what? The number of times we want the number to be increased. So basically it makes it very clearer and then more readable. So basically that is that. So now let's express our compare function. Now let's see how we can express our compare function we wrote in what? Pseudocode here. Now let's check something out here. Now what we are going to do is we want to write a function to what? Compare two numbers. We are going to write a function to compare two numbers. So let's do that. So we begin with what? The def keyword. So define. So we wrote this in pseudocode, right? So don't forget compare. Then into brackets. Then we say number 1, right? Number 1, and then these are the parameters we are defining for our function. Number 1 and number 2. These are the parameters. So today. Colon here. Now what is going to happen is you're going to make a decision here. When the user inputs this argument, the first number and second number, we want to compare the two numbers. So we use if statement. So we say if number 1 is greater, because we are comparing, right, is greater than number 2, then something should happen. What should happen? We want to return number 1 because it's greater, so we return it number 1. Now we say else means it should be the vice versa, the other way around, and in that case we return number 2. So what we are saying here is this: the function is used to what? Compare two numbers. So these are the parameters we define for our function, that is number 1 and number 2. If number 1, the user input, is greater than number 2, then return number 1 as the greatest number, or the number which is greater. Else, return number 2. Else means number 1 is not greater, and for that matter number 2 is greater. So return number 2 for us. So now let's check on how we can call this particular function. Now let's write let's say a program, and then we call this compare function inside this program. Let's do that. So we say number 1, and we say it's equal to, let me declare this data type as integer. Then we want the user to input something. Then we say enter. Let's say first number. So the user sees this and enter the second number. Then we say num2 is equal to int once again. Then we call on the input function. Then we tell the user what to do. Enter second number. So basically that is that. So the user enters these two numbers. So we have to take the numbers and then do the compare. But before we do that, we have to store the results, what the outcome in the variable we call results. You can define the variable to whatever name you want to. I decide to name it what results. This is equal to. Now I'm going to call the compare function inside this program. So I call the compare. Now it is in need of what? The argument. So I'm going to pass in this particular numbers. The user is going to what? Enter here. When the user enters a number, it's going to be stored in this variable. When the user enters a number here, it's going to be stored in this variable again. That is the number 2 and all that. So we're going to call the num 1, comma, and then what's num 2. So we are done with that. Now we are going to print the results, whatever the result is going to be. So we say, say print result. So now when we run this, let's see how it's going to be. We have to enter the first number, let's say 50. Enter second number, let's say 100. So good. You can see that 100 is what? Greater than 50. So basically that is that. So now let's make our program a bit functional, but a bit nicer than this. So I want to print something like why don't you concatenate? You say 100 is greater than 50, something like that, right? So you say 100 is greater than 50. So we concatenate this. Is greater than I don't want to call 50. Okay, and I wouldn't call the let's see. Yes, it's greater than okay. I don't want to call the 50 here. So what I'm going to do here is this. I would prefer, okay, call it results, right? I want to return that. I don't think this will work for us. I wanted to say, okay, now we do this results. So this when I run this will display 100, then it will say greater than, but then I don't want to call this 50. Then I don't want to call that. So why don't we do something like this? But in case we change it, I don't think it will work for us. So I think let's leave it like that. Let's leave it like that. So since we are returning the results, let's just return and then print out the results like that. Simple as that. So basically that is that. So let's proceed. So now let's go ahead and then explain it more. We are trying to create a function and then use the function in our program. So what we are going to do is this: we call on the define keyword, which is def. We give our function a name, we define the parameters for it. So now we're going to make a decision since we want to compare two numbers. So the number 1 stands for the first number the user is going to input. Number 2 is for the second number. Now if number 1 is greater than number 2, we want to return number 1, else return number 2. Now this else means, you know what this means already, so this shouldn't be a problem. Else means number 1 is not greater, and for that matter number 2 is greater, so return number 2 for us. So basically that is that. So when you run the program, to return the biggest number for us. But now here is the catch. Now we are writing the program and calling this particular compare function inside our program. So this is it. We have called it here. So we declare a variable called num1 and num2. So we are taking input from the user. That is, the user should give us the two numbers the user wants to compare. Then after that, we store them in what? The results. So we call the compare function here to compare what is in there. The argument we passed here. So the compare function does that and store it in this result. So we say print results. Whatever is stored here is going to be printed out for us in the console. So basically that is that. Now let's write another function to add two numbers. Let's write another function to add two numbers. So what's going to happen is this: we're going to write a program to give us the sum of what? Two numbers, in which we call our function to do the work for us. So basically that's what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to write a function to add two numbers for us. Then we're going to write a program that we call on this particular add two numbers function inside the program to do the work for us. So that is that. Let's see how that is going to happen for us again. So to do that, you can pause the video here and do it by yourself. After you can compare the results to ours. The question once again says what? We want to write another function to add two numbers. Then after that, we write a different program and we call this add function inside our program for it to come and do the work for us. So we call on the def keyword, then we we give our function a name to two numbers. So basically that is that. So inside our, what do you call it, parentheses here, we're going to define parameters for our function. So we say A as the number 1 and B as the number 2. So now what is going to happen? We want to return the sum. So we say return A plus B. So basically that is that. Now we are done writing our program here. Sorry, the space here is too big. Good. Now we are done writing our function. Now we're going to write a program in which we're going to call this function to come and do the work of addition for us. So we say num1, and then we call on the data type, it is integer. Then open our bracket and we call on the input keyword. So it's equal to, num1 equal to int into bracket input. Then we say enter first number. Let's add another white space here to clear this error. Enter first number. Then it does that. Then num2 is equal to int as well, input. Then we call it, say enter second number. Then after that, what's going to happen is this: we want to declare a variable called results and store the results inside. So we say, but then before we do that, let's call on our function to do the work for us. The name of the function is what? Add two numbers, right? Let's call it. And when you begin typing, it pops up. Now inside the bracket, it's looking for the arguments that we define the parameters for, and these are going to be what? The numbers the user is going to what? Input. That is the num1 and num2. So call this num1, comma, and then what? Num2. So that is that. Now whatever is going to happen here is after the user enters num1, the first number, and then the second number, this particular add two numbers function is going to take these two numbers and then add them for us. So from here it will leave this line and go back to this particular function and do the addition and return the answer, store it inside here and bring it back here for us. So we need to store it in a variable. So we say store it in a variable called results, equal to this. Then after that we can print result. So when we run it, we prompted to enter our numbers, right? Enter first number 56, second number 4, so 60. We've gotten the answer perfectly. So basically that is that. We've written a function here, and after that we wrote a simple program in which we call our function to come and do the work for us. After writing the function, you don't have to do the work by yourself. You can call on the function to do the work for you. Now let's see how we can call a function inside another function. Now what we mean by calling a function inside another function is this: we want to write a function to calculate the average of two numbers, in which we'll call the add two numbers function inside this find average function again. So now what is going to happen is this: we've already written a function here for adding two numbers, right? We still like it. We are going to maintain it. So we're going to write a program to calculate what? Average of two numbers. And you know, to calculate the average of two numbers, you have to add these two numbers and maybe divide it by what? 2. And that will give you what? The average. Since we've already written a function which does the work of addition, so in our program we don't have to write anything about addition again. We just have to deal with what? Average. So let's go ahead and then execute that. Then I think we are done looking at our basic functions in Python. Now let's do away with this. So basically in here, you want to write a program to calculate average of two numbers. So you can just comment it. So say program to calculate the average of two numbers. So basically that is that. Now what we're going to do is, so let's define the function for ourselves. So def keyword, and we call it calc average, something like that. Calc average. So inside here we're going to pass in define our parameters like x, y. there will be the numbers we're going to be what? Calculating the average for. Now we're going to define a variable here. Then we call on the add two numbers function here to come and do the addition of the two numbers we're going to pass in. So after that, then we can then proceed, then execute the rest. So let's define a variable like z is equal to, now let's call our function. So you can see that this is a function on its own. The the calc average is a function on it. So now we're going to call another function inside it. That is what we mean by what? Calling a function inside another function. We're going to call add two numbers. So we're going to add two. So you can see that it pops up by itself. When you begin typing, it pops up, right? So you just type. So now we're going to pass in some what? Argument for the given parameters. Let's say we want to find the average of what? 10 and then let's say 15. So 10 as our first argument. Second argument is what? 15. So we are done. So we've called a function inside another function like that. So now let's return the results and say z. So divided by 2. I'll explain what's going to happen here. Now what we are doing here is this. We've already what? Like I said, before you can find the average of two numbers, what is going to happen is this. You have to what? Add the two numbers, right? After adding the two numbers, and you divide it by what? 2. That will give you the average, isn't it? So basically that is that. Now we've already written a function that adds two numbers. So here we've defined a function to calculate the average. And we've defined our parameters. Let me just terminate it here. Now we've defined our average here, right? The average function here. Now inside there we declare a variable called z, which we have called our add two numbers function. So what is going to happen here is that this function is going to add these two numbers and store it inside the z variable. Then when we return it, it will then divide this z by 2. So the operation here is going to be stored inside the z and divided by 2 here. So that is what is happening here. So now let's then call our function with a calc average. Then now let's call on the two numbers with this. We want to find the average for that is 10 and then 15, right? So that is that. And then let me see the white space here again. So after that, now let's store it in a variable called results. Result. And then this is equal to this. So now let's try printing the result. So say print result. So after that, you can run the program and you see that to find the average of what? 10 and then 15 for us is what? 12.5. So basically that is that. Now let's go over again. What we are doing here is what? Calling a function inside another function. Calling a function inside another function. And truly, we already have a function here, which is for what? Adding two numbers. And after that, we've written a program. We've written another function, which is to what? Calculate the average of two numbers. And you and I know that to calculate the average of two numbers, you need to add the numbers and then divide them by 2. Since we already the program should have been something like, after writing this average function, then you write a program to add the two numbers, then before you proceed and then finding the average, right, using your function. But since we've already written a function that does the addition of two numbers, what we need to do is just to call that function inside this function here to come and do the addition for us and store the results inside the z variable. When we return it, it will then divide the z by 2 and that will give us the results. So we call on the results, we call on the function as calculate average, then we pass in our argument. So whatever operation is going to take place here is going to be stored inside this variable results. So we print in results, it displays actually the actual results for us. So basically that is, I think we are done writing our functions in Python. So basically this is just for beginners. I get it. This is just for beginning. So if you want to go deeper than this, in fact, it wouldn't be all that easy for all of us. So I think you can just, with this is just for a start. As a beginner, if you know how to define a function like this, call it inside another function, or define a function, write a program, call your function, the function inside a program and use it. In fact, then thumbs up for you. So basically that is that. I think we'll stop here and then we'll see how we can prepare towards our next lesson. So until that, I say thank you very much for watching, and then bye for now. You can try this by yourself several times to see how functions are written in Python. So basically that is that. Thank you very much and bye for now.